Hello, and welcome to Starting Points, where one thing leads to another. I want to start with this book called Sunken Treasure. It's by Gail Gibbons, and I really like it. And I think she does something not easily done. That is, take a topic and cover it to great extent in a way that, say, an 8-year-old, 10-year-old could understand. Sunken Treasure. She does this largely by choosing a real incident. That is, when the Spanish are sending ships, maybe 10 ships together, carrying gold, silver from the mining, jewels from Central America, from South America, and they're making their way up to the southern coast of Florida. And at the southern coast of Florida, there are a series of islands called the Keys. And they're there at what must be the time of hurricanes. That's something they're not necessarily all that familiar with. And the ships are scattered all about. And the one ship that she's tracing, which has a bulk of the real valuable things like silver and gold, is lost at sea. Some of the ships survive and get back, but news of this ship, the Spanish want it back. They want to find it, so they hire pearl divers and sponge divers from the area to dive down where they think it might be. Well, it's a big space to explore. So this story, she devotes more than half the book to it, but it underscores what similar searches were like. So I really like that approach that she's used. Then she gives some other examples so that the person can go off and find out more about those things. Now, I wanted to start with this because I saw in this a metaphor. Sunken treasure. That's in the ocean. What's the treasure in the ocean? Well, some seashells, some fish. No, whales. And what is it about the whale that was of value that people would pay money for? Would the whale meat taste better than eating animals that were kept as livestock and on farms for that purpose? Pigs and maybe goats and cows and so on? No. What was of value? Now we're talking about the start of the 1800s. People still don't have a good source of lights. When it gets dark, you can light candles. And candles have been around a long time. I looked up in Wikipedia. Wikipedia is such a wonderful resource for people that are trying to learn and follow up on something they're interested in. So you can go to Wikipedia, type in history of candles, and you find, they had candles in the time of the Romans. And they used pigs and sheep and goats, and they used the fat, and they melted it, rendered it into a liquid form. They could then be used to make candles, and they used the candles for lighting at night. They also were people who must have followed more of a daily pattern of up with the sun and to bed as it gets dark. So candle making. Now some nomadic tribes of herders did the same thing, of course. Some used olive oil. But it wasn't until around the start of the 1800s that whales were killed. The oil was heated and from the fleshy parts and turned into oil. And that was put into cask of oil. And, oh, wow, here's a whale oil lamp. And the whale oil lamp was, came probably in many different shapes and sizes. This one has a way to put the oil in here. Sometimes you might even have a little oil in this, so that if light's dimming going out, you may, but you still want to stay up a little bit longer, you might, without having to go into a bucket of oil or a keg of oil, you could pour some more oil in. Now, wicks. This has 3 sections where you wouldn't necessarily have to have a wick in every one. Just one wick, but maybe you want more light. You could have 3 wicks. The wick would go down. This is designed to be below the inner part. This is pushed up a little in the middle so the oil ends up being on the outer, once it gets down low, the outer part of this, and then into that. And the wick goes into that. You could, if the wick needs straightening or fixing, and there was a little tool attached to it, 2-pronged little tool that you could, or you could pull it down a little bit more, up a little more if you wanted. But you had that tool, you had this tool. When the wick would get burnt at the top in time, and you want to trim that, you'd have this little tool right there. You could just trim that burnt part off. And not only do you trim it, but you could capture it inside. You trim it and capture it inside. This could put the flame out as well. You could use it for that. But they had a little top that you could place on and snuff it out. Now, I've got a couple of candle things. This one had a movable part in it. When you put the candle in it, it would go down. This was down at the bottom, and then as this burned down, you could raise this up and raise the candle up. So that's one. And this one with a handle, this is fine to hold. If it maybe it could spill some on your hand, and that might burn. But this, you're pretty far enough away. Anything does spill, a wind, breeze, or anything, would end up in that. We keep this in our house in case of power outages. And the matches, and then if we can see our way to get to this, we'll light a match, put the candle in, and you know, get ready. I guess it's time for bed. So that was a huge, huge change. Now you'd think that when Edison came along with the electric light in 1880, let's say, that was going to make a big change. But of course, a lot of people, the records show, in the United States anyway, that they didn't get lights. Maybe 20% of the people had electric lights by 1920. It was slow at spreading. And then, before you know it though, everybody's got electricity. And so why are they still killing the whale? I don't know that I have a good answer for that question. It seems to me that yes, I can understand the Inuit have done it for 2,000 plus years, and it's risky. They're in a small boat that's paddled and maybe a sail, and a number of men dealing with big whales that are fairly docile. It's not like a sperm whale that they're dealing with, but still. By the way, I mentioned the sperm whale. There's a cavity in that big forehead of it that is filled with something called spermaceti. And when that is heated, turns into an oil, and spermaceti oil burns with a nice white light and no smell. See, burning those animal rendered oils, there'd be a smell, but not with the sperm whale. Well, I guess it brings me a little bit to looking at the other side of this chart. So I'll stand and so you can see it, the extent of it a little bit. It's a map. Rather than showing all the kinds of whales, it shows some of them, tells something about them, has a little code, pattern code, which you could then, when you find that match the color or the straight up and down lines or the diagonal blue lines, say, oh, that's where the bowhead whale is. The bowhead whale, the Inuits would even hunt that. It's a humongous whale. Well, this shows factory ships, shows migration routes. It's filled with a lot of information. And now, on some of the countries that have whaling operations, that information is quite outdated. This is 1976, so it's 1975 data. The catch in 75, the quota for 76, Soviet floating factory, North Pacific, no fin. They caught 33 in 75 and 3,750 sperm whales. Here they're allowed to catch more sperm whales, another 1,000 more sperm whales, but no fin, because the fin whale is so endangered. Now, wait a minute, who's doing this? Well, 1946, the year after the Second World War, people had a chance to catch up with things a little bit. By the 40s, many great whale populations had suffered serious and in some cases devastating losses. Confronted with dwindling numbers, whaling nations in 1946 formed the International Whaling Commission, the IWC, International Whaling Commission. Whaling nations. So that would be Spain and Portugal and Peru and Chile and South Korea and the United States and Canada and Japan and Russia and Iceland and Faroe Islands. Norway. So those nations got together. Now, they weren't required to get together, but they were trying, as in many cases, like the United Nations, to work together, patch mend things. But it's not been a smooth period of time. There have been instances where members left. They weren't required to be a member of this. They would leave, or that they would say, well, we're going to still hunt whales for scientific purposes. But when they were found that they didn't really doing anything in terms of scientific purposes, and they were chastised for that, they first agreed that they wouldn't hunt, and they did that for a year, and then they started hunting again, and finally they just left the group, which they could. Now, if you've got one of these big floating factory ships, this floating factory ship doesn't go and catch the whales. Smaller boats do the catching of the whales. Then they converge on the factory ship. Their whale is hauled up a conveyor belt into the big ship, and it's processed and all. And when they get enough that needs to go shipping, even then, that factory ship doesn't go back. Other ships are coming, all coordinated. Other ships are coming, collecting and returning with the barrels of oil or the meat, however it may have been processed. The Inuit would use the oil for lights in the long winters, and they would, in cooking, and it might be life and death for them, the finding of the whale, securing that bounty of meat. Now, in some places, the meat is not being eaten by people, it's being eaten by dogs. It's part of pet food. I don't know if it's for cat food or others, but it's been used in dog food. There's lots of things I don't know, so you can check it out. So I just think there's the Peruvian whaling. Each year, the Peruvian whaling industry kills about 1,000 sperm, a few fins. It's not because they wouldn't want to kill more. It's just there are only a few, and hundreds of smaller species now. Porpoise. So, but remember, this 50 years ago. So you want something a little more up to date. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, I'm going to look a little more at that early whaling experience. I've got some good books to share with you. So thanks for joining me. Until next time, bye for now.